and a very warm welcome to the first United debate show of 2009. Well, it's been quite a few weeks at Old Trafford. Just before Christmas, Alex Ferguson's team were crowned world champions. Over the festive period, United enjoyed maximum points and only yesterday booked a place in the fourth round of the FA Cup courtesy of a comfortable 3-0 win at Southampton. We'll be discussing all of those points in the next half hour, and joining me for the first part of the show are 1968 European Cup winner Alex Stepney and the People's Steve Bates. Well, Steve and Alex, welcome to the show. Steve, United at the start of 2009 effectively fighting on all four fronts that they can fight on. That's where they want to be, isn't it?
Absolutely. The manager's been banging on for the last few weeks, particularly before they went to Japan, that if they can reach the new year just a few points adrift of the leaders, he'd be delighted. And you have to say, the way United have performed so far this season hasn't been absolutely outstanding, yet they're right in the mix. And Alex Ferguson is always saying that the second half of the season is where Manchester United traditionally come on strong. It's the part of the season that United players are all tuned into really performing at the best, and I think that's what he'll be expecting to see.
And Alex, January congested, lots of fixtures, but I don't think, again, United would have it any other way, would they?
No, they wouldn't. I mean, Alex has said he's got a squad of 23. I mean, if Wes Brown happens to come back from injury, there's 24 there. Very important month. I mean, I think about 8 games this month now. OK, a great win at Southampton yesterday, not with his best team, you know, and very important week. We Derby midweek with the semi-finals Carling Cup. Then they've got Chelsea on Sunday, which is I suppose when we think about it, it's a must-win game. But United's home form has been fantastic, and that's what they've got to keep doing till the end of the season.
You mentioned the home form. Alex alludes to it there. Sir Alex has been talking about the fact that there's so many of the biggest games away from home were in the first part of the season. The spin side is all the big teams have got to come to Old Trafford.
Yeah, I think that's why, Alistair, that he's always been banging on that if he can just stay a few points in touch with the top teams, he'd be delighted because of the particularly hard sort of start to the season. You know, they've played all of the top 10 teams away from home, I think, so far. So they've got that to come back at Old Trafford, which would be great. But Alex has just alluded to a very important point there for me. The last few weeks have seen United, and this week as well with the Derby game as well. But basically what's happened, he's having to use all his players, all his squad, and he's been giving all the squad time on the pitch, which is really important, because what he doesn't want to do is come to an important phase of the season and he's not used any of his fringe players. That's and they've got to get up to speed. What's happened in Japan, he's played a few of the fringe players. It's happened at Southampton yesterday, he played some of the fringe players. He'll do so again against Derby and in the return leg as well. So he's giving everybody in the squad minutes on the pitch and time to get used to, what it's like playing in the first team.
Yeah, of course, the likes of Welbeck and Gibson responded with goals as well. That's a bonus, isn't it?
Well, it's a bonus for them, and they're getting the experience, and they're getting match fitness, and that's what it's all about. It's okay playing the reserves and that, but you've got to play first team football. You've got to play those 90 minutes under your belt and keep match fit, because you never know when the manager's going to need you because of injury. I mean, look at that team yesterday. When you think that Evra's out, Rio Ferdinand's out, that's at the back on the back four. I mean, Gary Neville hasn't had a lot of games this season. He's come in, but they never conceded, and this is what's kept them at the top. They haven't conceded many goals, and that's what it's all about.
I remember last season, Alex Ferguson earlier in the season said it would be the fringe players that would win them the trophies. And he's spot on. I know that sounds a kind of perverse logic, but it actually is the case that you're bound to get injuries, particularly at the business end of the season where it's all coming to a head. And if you've got players who can step in effortlessly and just slip in, and they know the role, they know the job they've got to do, those are the players that can win you the title.
But they've got to get time under the belt playing, Steve, to keep match fit, and that's what he's done. He's utilised players during games. They might have come on in the second half, they might have played for the first half or 70 minutes and brought one of the other lads on just to keep the pace of the game going.
And it's a real bonus, the Carling Cup, isn't it? I mean, it's one of those competitions where he really does get an opportunity to give meaningful fixtures to players who can get in many cases, their first taste of first team action.
Mean, I think over the last few years, most managers have accepted that they're going to play at the weakened team, out of the big four, and that's what's happened. But it gives those players chance to keep fit, to keep and show the manager what they can do. And that's what it's all about, because you never know when you're going to be needed.
It's effectively replaced reserve team football now, hasn't it? The Carling Cup and perhaps the early rounds of the FA Cup if you get a draw against a weaker side. Because, the sort of network now behind the Premier League in terms of, reserve and youth and junior football is not as strong as it once was. So I think he was particularly disappointed last season when they went out to Coventry that, it robbed him of a chance to give the players sort of a run in the team in those particular games.
Yeah. Well, of course, a possibility of winning a trophy. I mean, let's not underestimate that it's a potential trophy win by beating Derby over 2 legs.
He's never ever put a team out basically that he thinks that won't win the game, and they're still in 4 competitions. I mean, they've done all the hard work. What they've got, winning the World Club Championship last year, along with the European Cup and the Premiership, but he's still in 4 competitions, and he's got to utilise his players, and he wants to win everything. He always has done, and fair dues to the man, really.
I think the players have got that mindset and mentality as well. I remember when United won the League Cup against Wigan, Wayne Rooney, I think that was his first major trophy for United, right. and he was absolutely delighted to win that. And, when you've got a bunch of players like the manager's got, winning is all that matters, not what you win. Winning is all that matters. And, people might devalue the Carling Cup and say it's not worth having. You try telling that to a team who's going out in the final, they want to win it.
You saw the game yesterday at Southampton, and Wayne Rooney came on in the second half, and he was actually getting everybody. He was calling his players to come on, keep going. We want to win this game comfortably.
Players aren't bothered by fixture congestion, are they?
No, the more you play, the thing is about it, time goes so quickly as a footballer, game after game after game. You want to keep
training after training after training, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course it does. That's what it's all about, and you're match fit. That keeps you training.
I think it's an interesting situation that United find themselves in now, because they know they've got Inter Milan in a month. Between then, they've got, obviously, Tottenham in the FA Cup, which was the draw yesterday. They've got the potentially of getting to a final. And they've got Chelsea as effectively their first big game of the new year. Yeah. It's an interesting position, because there's going to be almost three different sides that's going to be selected by Sir Alex during that period.
Absolutely, obviously, he'll want his main players, his kind of, his A-list players to be really performing. I don't think so far... Ronaldo's not really kind of fully clicked into gear yet. Berbatov, we're just seeing now what he might do. So all these are positive signs for the manager when we're coming up to these big games. And as you said, Alice, they've got the big games against Inter Milan in February, and Alex Ferguson will want all these big players firing.
From a media journalist perspective, do you feel United will be very quiet in the transfer window, which is open?
Yeah, I think the manager's been on record as saying the two Tosic and Lajic, which he's just brought from Serbia, they will be probably his only signings. He did say to us a few weeks ago in a briefing that he did that a lot of clubs and managers are onto him at the moment, trying to get some of his players out on loan in January.
And what was his feeling about that?
Not going anywhere.
Not going?
No, basically he's got Fraser Campbell out on loan at Tottenham, who he can't get back. He's without him for the rest of the season. So the Danny Welbeck situation is a real bonus for him, the fact that Welbeck is coming on strong and looking the part. That's offsetting the loss of Campbell. So he won't want to be letting any other players out, but he did say that he's been bombarded by sort of people wanting the likes of Gibson, Possebon, those kind of players out on loan.
What about Carlos Tevez? I'm asking you again as a journalist. Where is the sort of latest standpoint on that?
We quizzed the manager about this on Friday, and it's clearly a matter that's kind of giving them a few problems at the minute. I wouldn't say Alex was tetchy in response to it, but I think he would like the situation settled. But I feel it's one of these that might even drift towards the end of the season, because United, clearly the feeling at United is they won't be held to ransom. No. I think the transfer fee they've got to pay, which is about 27 million. I don't think that's negotiable. What is negotiable, obviously, is Tevez's sort of contract, and I think Kia Jarabchin, which is who is the owner and agent of Tevez, is obviously trying to squeeze as much out of United as he can.
From a football perspective, do you see a future for Carlos Tevez at United?
I do, because I'm saying that, Alistair, for the simple reason that he has quoted him. He's been quoted as saying that Sir Alex wants him to stay. He wants to stay at the club. A deal's been done basically to sit down at the end of the season and sort everything out and get him to sign on for Manchester United. So I don't see if there's any problem. It's only if something else has materialised since they had that original meeting.
I think football fans are very uneasy about this idea, this concept of a transfer fee not going to a club. I mean, how does that work? Let's sort of put a bit of flesh on the bones. Why are United handing money over to an individual here?
Well, basically, Jarabchin, whose company MSI originally bought Tevez when he was in South America, and they bought him as an entity, an asset, and they
buy Mascherano at the same time.
Yeah.
And
so an individual owns another individual.
Yeah, I think it's more popular out in South America than it is here in Europe, particularly in England as well, in the Premier League, because of the problems they've had with Tevez and West Ham and Sheffield United. They don't want any more of these situations to arise. But Tevez is owned by a company rather than a club. His registration is held by a company.
Alex, football's changed a bit, hasn't it?
Well, just a bit from my day, I can tell you. I mean, we had to do our own negotiations. We didn't have agents.
I think the thing about it is that Tevez, you think, effectively, whatever you look about it, United are going to be handing over a significant transfer fee for a player, whoever it's going to.
To an individual and not a club, yeah.
I mean, but it's part of their transfer budget gone, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they're tuned into doing that. It's not a problem because they're getting the player, and once they buy the player for that amount of money, they will hold the players' registration.
If you look at what he's done so far, he's brought another 2 young kids in the January window. Now, he done the same last year. He brought in Anderson and Nani. Not expecting everybody to play as much as they did, because but for injuries they did, and they performed well. He's building for the future again. And if whatever happens by the end of the season, if United do win certain trophies, I think that Tevez will want to keep him.
Okay, I think Tevez wants to stay as well, so that is the key issue.
Steve, thank you very much. That's about it for part one. After the break, though, Steve will be replaced in the journalistic hot seat by United Week stand editor Andy Mitten. See you in a minute. Welcome back to part 2 of the United Debate Show. Well, Doctor Who's just had a transformation into a new body, and we've changed the journalist from Steve Bates to Andy Mitten. You're most welcome to the second part of the show, Andy, and you've recently been in Japan for obvious reasons. What was that experience like with United winning the world title?
It's a great experience. We're out there for 8 days. It's twice as expensive as it was last time because the pound's faltered against the yen. I think United took 800 fans out there, and eyebrows were raised at paying around £9 for a pint. But the trip was a big success. The manager took it very seriously, and while the British media derided it, it was taken seriously by all the teams and by the media throughout the world. I think it made the back page when United had won it of all the biggest newspapers in the world, and yet the Daily Mail described it as being virtually meaningless. That's not an opinion which was shared by the players, the manager and the fans out there. Liga de Quito are South American champions. They beat some extremely strong Argentinian teams to win that competition. OK, they're not Boca, they're not River, they're not Flamengo, but they're still the champions of South America. United took the tournament as it should have been taken. Of course, there was $5 million worth of prize money, which is worth a lot more than it was 6 months ago. Conceded 3 against Gamba Osaka. I think the jet lag was kicking in, and the jet lag really affected the players on the trip.
Really?
They talked about it a little bit, but behind the scenes they were really struggling. I think 5 days into the trip, Sir Alex Ferguson had 2 hours sleep one night, and there were all sorts of stories of Paul Scholes and Ryan Giggs not being able to go to sleep, 3 o'clock in the morning, being caught painting in their hotel.
Painting?
Painting, yeah.
Right. Where did they get the equipment to start painting?
I've no
at 3
idea.
o'clock in the morning?
But you saw the players walking around, clearly jet-lagged.
Did they try and keep the players on sort of British time so that they could come straight back to the Stoke game afterwards? Was that kind of part of the plan?
That was the idea. The big fear was coming back against Stoke and looking jaded. There was a 9-hour time difference. I've still not really got over that trip. I'm still waking up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I've never suffered jet lag as badly as now. The players' body clocks were wound back about 4 or 5 hours, so they were encouraged to go to bed at 2 in the morning, and then they were eased back in. But you can't play with jet lag like that.
You've obviously played in games in where you've crossed time zones and so on. I mean, physically, we almost take it for granted, they're fit, they're players. But tell us mentally, I mean, how difficult is that?
No, it is very difficult. I mean, for what they do today to what we used to do. I mean, I played in that World Club Championship. We played at Estudiantes, and in those days, I think we played Newcastle on the Saturday, then flew straight out after the game via Madrid and Rio, and then played the game on the Wednesday night, and then came back and played on the Saturday. That really was a bit of a killer, but we had to do it. It's one of those things. But
do you remember the feelings that you had physically and mentally?
You don't know where you are.
You don't know where you are.
Just don't know. It takes you 2 or 3 days, even to acclimatise. It's like when you go on a long haul holiday. It takes you a couple of days to acclimatise, and you could see basically in those games that they played. The first game, they didn't know where they were. Some of the players, did they? My thought about it, though, Alistair, was that if they came back, they had the Stoke and the Middlesbrough game. If they could get through those games, which ironically did both 1-0, then they're still in there chasing the title.
And I'm sorry to go back to the world title again, but why the concept of it not being a tournament to take seriously, other than those who participated in it? Why do you think the British media are the way they are?
I think they show themselves up for being a little bit parochial, to be honest, because it's taken very seriously in South America. Milan built their whole fitness preparation last season around them peaking in December so that they would win that competition. Barcelona took it very seriously the year before. 1,000 Liverpool fans made the journey in 2005. The European Cup was derided in the 1950s when Sir Matt led Manchester United into Europe. The tournament does have flaws. Apart from anything, the cost of tickets, it was nearly £200 to sit in the main stand for the final, which is an awful lot of money. And playing against part-time teams like from New Zealand, it does diminish the credibility. But the champions of Africa were in there, the champions of South America, the Mexican team were a good side. Of course, the European Cup is still more difficult to win and has stronger teams. But I'm a believer in this tournament. I think it's got legs. And the average crowd there was 45,000. And with it going to Abu Dhabi next year, it's going to become a global tournament. The hard part is winning the European Cup to get there next year.
Yeah, absolutely. United came back victorious, and as you mentioned, 2 1-0 victories. Do you think that kind of, the 2 performances, shall we say, that got them the 1-0 wins, do you think that was still a reflection of the Japan experience?
I do. I feel that that trip obviously took so much out of them, and they had these 2 games. All right, no disrespect to Stoke, but that's not a bad team to come home and come back to and play and hopefully win the game, which they did. I mean, I know it was a late goal, but they got the goal. Same against Middlesbrough, but the whole thing about it is it keeps them in the title race, and that's what, at the end of the day, the manager wants to win. That and the Champions League, he wants to win both those trophies again.
United are in a position, we mentioned it in part 1, where they're on 4 fronts. When you cast your mind, you're writing a book currently about United in the 90s. When you cast your mind back to 99, so many things have to fall into place, but surely even more things to make a quadruple, which is where United are at the moment.
And we won the Charity Shield as well. Imagine if we could have won the Super Cup. You always need an element of luck. I mean, the greatest example was when Solskjaer and Sheringham decided to score in 99, and the manager knows that, but he'll be preparing as best he can. He's been pretty lucky on injuries in the last couple of years. I mean, to go into the game in Moscow last year without a single injury was very, very lucky. And this year, there are a couple of issues. Rio's back, Wes is out as well, but Gary Neville's come back. He's got the squad, as was said in the earlier part of the show. Players are getting minutes. Little bonuses like Danny Welbeck coming through. He's giving Anderson a rest. He's given Tevez a rest as well. I think United, along with Barcelona, who are outstanding this season, are the 2 strongest teams in Europe. But that inter-game will be very, very difficult because Mourinho was brought in to find success in Europe.
I mean, I was reading some quotes from Jose Mourinho in the last 2 or 3 days about United. It's clear the topic of conversation in Inter and in Milan is already about that fixture.
Well, it is, and I've read a couple of quotes. I mean, he reckons Vidic should be out for 2 or 3 games, so he won't play against Milan. He also said that Rooney should be suspended as well. That's typical Mourinho. But at the end of the day, I think it's one of those things. So Alex he's got something to do to beat Mourinho in the Champions League after the Oporto game. So that has always been his forte, hasn't it? To hit back at the right time.
I mean, you're based in Europe. Is there a feeling that that's one of the ties of the round, Inter Milan, Manchester United?
It is the tie of the round. I mean, you look at Barcelona-Lyon, big game, but United-Inter could easily be a final. But Inter have won the Italian League 3 times in the last 3 years. Mancini was an outstanding manager. but he couldn't do it in Europe. The form in Europe was always very questionable. Mourinho has given him that steel. He's making enemies along the way with the Italian media. He's saying all the right things to wind United fans up and to wind the manager up. But he's got into the ring with a heavyweight, you know. Sir Alex will not be bullied by Jose Mourinho. I've got a lot of respect for Mourinho. I think he's an outstanding manager. And if Sir Alex was to move on tomorrow, I'd like him to replace him.
Really?
Yeah. But I still think United are better and stronger in Europe than Inter Milan are.
Andy just giving us a little side tangent there. He quite fancies Jose Mourinho to succeed to Alex Ferguson. What do you feel, Alex?
Let's wait and see when Sir Alex decides to retire. I mean, it could be another 4 or 5 years yet.
Let's keep on the Inter Milan game. Right. I'm fascinated by it. I think it's got the potential, as you say, had it not been drawn early as being a final. It's a two-legged affair with United away first. Is that significant?
I think it is. I mean, for the simple reason that, like what Andy said there, that, last year he didn't have injuries. If he hasn't got injuries coming up to that game, this is one of the games which he's got to put his best team out. And he will do, and he'll get the result he wants out there. I mean, when we won it, I mean, Sir Matt Busby always just said, well, you draw your away game and you win your home game, and you'll get through, and you'll get at least get to the final. Sir Alex doesn't think that way sometimes. He wants to go and win away from home. That's how the game's changed. But I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think that the home game is going to be the basis of who goes through.
OK, let's bring it back to the present. Let's not forget Chelsea at the end of the week. Always a huge game, whatever the outcome. But do you feel United need to win that game?
Yeah, psychologically, because we've had the difficult away games. We've always said we've got these home games. I think United can and will beat Chelsea. It'll be very difficult. Their away form, they won the first 8 away games in succession before they didn't win at Everton. Huge game, but United are getting stronger, and Chelsea and Liverpool have both been dropping points where they might have been expected to win. If United are going to win the league, now is where they need to up it a gear. They've had a good season so far, but players like Ronaldo have been 8 out of 10, whereas they were 10 out of 10 last year. Raise it a bit, beat Chelsea. They've got the squad to win and get stronger as the season goes on.
If you look at the home form last year, Andy, it was magnificent. Yeah. And it's basically on the same wavelength, isn't it? I mean, we've drawn one, they've won every other home game, and that's how they're going to do. They've got Villa at home, they've got Arsenal at home, they've got Liverpool at home, they've got Chelsea at home. If they can win those games, then obviously they're going to be there and thereabouts.
It's interesting you say that. I think the only draw was it not the first of the season?
Yeah,
against Newcastle under Kevin Keegan.
And Shay Given did have an outstanding game again.
Yeah. Reading we drew last season
right.
at the start of the year, and Newcastle this year.
That's right.
And we've won every other game.
Fascinating stuff. Well, gents, thanks very much indeed for joining us. If you quickly go into your glass ball, do you see victories against Derby over 2 legs? I think Chelsea?
Yeah, I do. I think with his squad and the team he's going to put out, yes, I think they'll beat Derby. And obviously his best team will be playing against Chelsea to beat them.
Andy, the same?
Yeah, I think we'll win both games. Chelsea will be far tougher, but I think United will win by a narrow margin. OK, gents, thanks as ever. Thanks to Andy stepping into part 2, and Alex as always. That's it for this week's United Debate Show. We're throughout the football season, of course, in 2009. See you next week.